I have an ulterior object respecting your researches. I want to make a review and abstract of them, for the quarterly perhaps, or some such vehicle. I have therefore another motive for wishing to go through them under your immediate guidance, besides the mere advantages to myself. I should wish to take those points of view in my review, which should be most consonant with your mind and views.
A second volume of my researches is just out, which, with the first, I propose sending in a day or two to St. James's Square. Give them a value by accepting them from me. All such marks come with a very different feeling now to what they would have had formerly, for there is now a different communion between us. Before it would have been with much of a formal courtesy, now it is with deep respect.
She was really sort of the world's first computer programmer. She was working with Charles Babbage on his difference engine and analytical engine, and she was really the person who saw that the analytical engine could be more than just a machine that calculated large tables of numbers, that actually maybe one day it could be used to write music or compose art. And she also actually wrote the first computer program to calculate the Bernoulli series. So she really saw computers, or the future of computers, much more clearly than anyone else at the time. Rather than just a machine that can do sum, she saw it as something that could be creative.
Ada's personality was in a way perfectly suited to the times she found herself in, which were extraordinary times. It was the fact that she had these two parts to her, clearly defined because of where she came from. She had the sort of creative, imaginative, dare I say, romantic side, which came from her father, which her mother always desperately tried to suppress for fear that she would go off in the same dissolute direction as her father, who was described as mad, bad and dangerous to know, famously. And on the other side, she had her mother, who was known as a fiercely intellectual woman, a blue stocking, as they were known at the time. And it was the interaction of these two things that made Ada such an important figure, in a way, to what happened in that period. And the reason is because she both had an appreciation for the sort of work, for example, that Charles Babbage was doing. She could grasp it, she could understand basically what he was on about in terms of the intellectual aspects of it, the ideas that had to be understood, the mathematics that had to be understood, because she did understand the quite complex mathematics, well, for some of us, such as Bernoulli numbers and things like that. She was able to cope with that. So she could cope with that on the one hand, but on the other hand, she had the imagination to see what this meant. She was one of very few people, other than Babbage himself, who realised he was onto something that was absolutely extraordinary and had the potential to change the world. Not many others saw it at the time, but she definitely saw it at the time. And it's that makes her such a striking figure of the period.
Ada Lovelace Day is on the 24th of March, and what we're hoping people will do is that they will write a blog post or do a podcast or in some other way talk about a woman whose work they admire. And it's a global day, so it's the 24th of March wherever you are, in whatever time zone you're in. So actually there's a period of about 50 hours where it's the 24th of March somewhere around the world, starting in Kiribati. So you've got a lot of opportunity there to get your post online and to talk to your friends and relatives and try and get other people involved. There's a website at findingada.com where we're asking people to sign a pledge to contribute to Ada Lovelace Day on the 24th of March. And then on the day, they'll be able to go back to adalovelace.com and add the URL to their post in our database, so that we can firstly kind of have a list of all the people that are involved and where their blog posts are, and also so that we can plot them out on a map as well. And last year we had a map of all the posts, and it was really fascinating seeing Ada Lovelace Day pick up speed around the world. So this really is kind of like an international day.
You have an absolute bottomless source of drama and comedy and action. Everything you could possibly want to build a story is in is in these actual happenings. To build each individual episode, I'll kind of hone in on something that seems to be important. So music, for example. Ada Lovelace was a musician herself, and she was very fascinated by music theory and its connection to mathematics, and its connection also to symbolic logic, which was another huge interest of her. It was a field that was just starting up. She was a student of Augustus de Morgan, who was one of the founding fathers of symbolic logic, and she saw the connection between that sort of symbolic language, between music as a symbolic language, and between possibly the analytical engine. So she has a great many connections to music. Meanwhile, Babbage, of course, is enormously famous as being this music-hating avenger of street musicians. His name comes up in Parliament in these debates about the banning of street music. Babbage is the nemesis of street musicians. So that is in itself a just great conflict for a comic.
Well, we have 7 letters in total from Ada Lovelace to Faraday, and we also have a letter from Charles Babbage, which talks about Ada Lovelace and her work, and is basically an introduction to Faraday before she first wrote to him. Faraday at the time was a preeminent scientist of his day. He was the head of the Royal Institution, he gave public lectures, and he'd performed some pretty exciting experiments himself and made some fundamental discoveries on the nature of electromagnetism. So he was a natural person for Ada Lovelace to correspond with. She actually asked if she could collaborate with Faraday. The problem was that Faraday really did all of his research by himself. He did work with assistants, but for very much his assistants and worked on the technical side. He didn't really collaborate with other scientists, although he did correspond with a wide range of scientists, both in the UK and in Europe. So he probably wasn't the best person for Ada Lovelace to approach, and he did say that he wouldn't be able to work with her, partly because he was suffering from ill health himself at the time.